flee or fight. That's great. I want to keep that, but I don't want it to dictate my behavior. I don't want it to dictate my life. I don't want to be who I am, right? So I need to expose it to learn how to live above it, and then I can actually do something about it. This is where I think we can come back to starting to fix who I am. Fix is the wrong word because there's no right or wrong, but how I can reflect back on it and adapt the parts of me that I want to adapt, that aren't working for me, that aren't getting the life I want to have. I equate it to, wearing a jacket and there's a hole in the jacket. It's hard if you try and sew it up while you're wearing the jacket. But if you take the jacket off and you can look at it and then you can sew it up when you're not wearing it. That's the idea of transcending it and then looking back on and going, oh, I want to fix this. I know where that behavior came from because I understand where it developed. And then I have the ability to disarm it, to make it disappear, to go away. So it's not in my future anymore. It's not dictating my behavior, which gets my future. Okay? So there are these limiting beliefs that I'm held by, that I'm bound by, through what I am committed to in my culture. Again, it's not good or bad. I just want you to have freedom. I want you to have the choice to be able to choose it. And there's my limiting belief about myself. Maybe I was a kid and I put my hand up in class and I answered the question wrong and everyone laughed at me. And I'm like, oh, I better not do that again. So I became reserved. Or I react differently. I'm like, oh, I'm going to know everything. And I became this, hyper studious person and started to know it all. So that's my limiting belief. That's my parameter. It might get me good things, but it's still limiting me because that's my limitation. I only have that capacity. So what do we need to do? Where do we go? We need to get to this place where we're actually not dependent on anything. And this is where it's scary for humans and for identity. It's to give up attachment, to need nothing. So my motto I live by, it sounds kind of weird, but to need nothing with all my heart. It means to be in this love, joy, abundance without attachment to everything. Because that's what's dictating me, right? It's dictating my behavior. So I might have all these great things, a big house, lots of money, a nice car, I travel all over the world, I have great clothes. I might have those things. But if I need them, because I think if I don't have them, I won't be good enough and I will be kicked out of the tribe, which equates to me feeling like I'm going to die. So I feel like I'm going to die if I don't have these things. But to get those things, I have to bend over backwards and work all hours of the day and never stop. I'm being controlled by these things. So I don't have any freedom, right? I'm not suggesting you shouldn't have those things, but I want you to be able to have them with freedom, with choice. So I need to get to a place of abundance without dependency on all this stuff. And not only will that help me, but it will help our planet, right? If we're not consuming so much, the planet will calm. We're actually in this time right now where the planet's actually, there's all these signs of recovery. It's happening very quickly. Nature will survive. We're the ones that are disrupting it. So to live in abundance, you have to not be attached to these things. So you have to think, what do I really need? Right? And we need, as I mentioned in one of them, we're looking to be loved instead of being loved. There's a massive distinction here. Because if I'm looking to be loved, I'm having to perform who I need to be in order for people to like me, so then I am loved. So I'm dependent now on the performance, and I'm dependent on these people's reaction to it, liking me. If I can get to a place inside me where I am this default feeling of joy or love, that's our default feeling. So many of us have never gone there because our worry takes us away from it. And so we become exposed to this life of stress and worry, which is our amygdala. It's just a chemical dependency, right? It's a chemical reaction. And that gives us the life we have. But what do I really need? I need some food, for sure. Although there are breatharians, and I met one of them. I didn't follow him home, so I don't know if he actually ate sometime. But I met this guy who says he doesn't eat. We don't know. We don't know the capacity of humans because we're only measuring it through our consciousness, what we know, and through the tools we have right now. We know there are things that are happening outside our capacity of measurement. There's studies of collective consciousness, right? There's something that there's a shift through collective consciousness. So things happen in parts of the world at the same time. There's a famous study with bonobo monkeys where there was one tribe of monkey started using these tools a certain way. And this other group of monkeys, completely isolated on an island, not in the mainland, completely separated, no contact, started using the tool in the same way. So there's something that transferred. There's some collective consciousness. And so this is what I'm about. If we can shift this consciousness, if we can shift this collective consciousness to a different way, to a abundance versus scarcity mindset, if we can shift it and create a tipping point, it's going to affect everything for all the generations to come. Because I am who I am, and the animal I am, and you are who you are, because you inherited it. You inherited these biogenic traits. Over millions of years of our animal reacting to the environment, we developed these reactions, these traits. You inherited the trauma you inherited from your family. You inherited these behaviors, which they might be fantastic behaviors. So I'm not suggesting you give it all up. I'm suggesting you look at it and choose. So abundance is really just not having this attachment, this need for all these things, right? So I don't need that much. I need a little bit of food. I have, if I can go get quiet with myself, I can find this place of calm, of joy, of bliss. So I have that. I have love. I've infinite love, and then I can go around my environment giving love. So I can feel this release of oxytocin, this positive feeling. That's free. I go and do a random act of kindness. I get oxytocin. The person receiving it gets oxytocin, and the person watching it gets oxytocin. So why don't we just have that behavior? Let's adapt that behavior. And we know 12 weeks of meditation starts adapting the brain. The amygdala shrinks in size. 12 weeks. So if we take this next few months, the year, the rest of our lives, our brains will adapt. We pass on that, and our species will start to adapt. We'll become more efficient. Every time I release oxytocin, my brain goes, oh, wow, that feels good. It becomes more efficient at it. It goes, let's remember those neural pathways. Let's remember how to do it. Let's become better at it. Right now, it's really efficient at releasing negative chemicals, right? The amygdala reacts faster than my conscious brain, floods me with these powerful chemicals, and I get nervous. I get anxious. That's a conditioning. Over millions of years, my brain conditioned that way. I can recondition it. It'll take time, but I can condition. I can have the experience instantly, but the actual brain conditioning will change from generation to generation. And we can start living more in unity, in peace, right? Imagine that future. Imagine that's who we are, living in this new time in abundance. Scarcity is me not knowing where it's going to come from. If I'm going to get this again, so I better hang on to it. I better attach to it, right? We didn't know a few 100,000 years ago where our food was going to come from, where our next meal was coming from. So food was so important. We still have that. Make sure the fridge is full or I get anxious. Make sure my cupboards are full. Make sure I can get access to the restaurant. People panicked when we went into quarantine. Where are we going to get food? They start stockpiling, right? I know I can go right now for probably 90 days without eating because I have enough fat stored in my body. We have this great system where we store these meals on our body, but I still live in scarcity, right? I know people who have years of food stored in their body, energy, right? And we're not burning through it because we live in a scarcity mindset versus abundance. We have to get to abundance. This is the opportunity. This is the time. I'm doing a workshop, April 25th, where we're going to start going through this. We're going to work on our individual, our shifting ourselves and getting to this place. So not only we can have this amazing life, but we can start affecting other people, start affecting civilization, start affecting the species. We got to look at the cost of our civilization. Yes, it might make me more comfortable, but do I want that? Because it's making me weaker, right? We can't adapt so much to the environment. I can't run and climb trees and go to altitude so well as I could because of this cushioned environment, my atrophied body. We have to challenge it. We don't want comfort. all that we want is actually on the other side of discomfort. We need to bring self-discipline to it, right? Not in a bad way, just, hey, I'm committed to this more than I'm committed to that pleasure, right? So I've gone really quick. I see lots of questions, so I'm going to answer some questions. But DM me, reach out to me through here. Come to that workshop. Let me get to this question real quick. So scientifically proven is all that I said. Yes, there's a lot. You have to understand science, how slow it has to be, because it has to validate itself. So if I have a theory, right? Hey, I have this theory of X. We now need to create a study to see if that's true. If I can recreate that outcome, right? I'm in a sense almost trying to disprove it, right? That's how science works. Let's try and disprove it. If we don't, it's true. And so I need funding for this study. So I have to go and raise money to get funded in order to have this study. Then that creates positive results. Then someone else has to go and do the study as well so they can validate that study. So to get the funding, to get the validation takes years. And then, say it's a medical thing, then it has to get into the medical books, which they only print them every few years. So we have got to wait till the reprint and then put them in the books, right? So it's very slow, it's cumbersome, it's fantastic. I love science, it's fantastic. But sometimes this stuff is ahead of it. But what I'm looking at, what I'm talking about is rooted in science. So there's the science of psychology, talks about the biogenic, sociogenic, idiogenic traits. That's how they determine a personality. These behaviors look at what a lot of behavioral therapists look at, called the lizard brain, different levels of the brain that developed over our history as a mammal. So yes, this is based in science. I can't see the question. Sorry, I got something blocking it. Without water. We can't survive. The question was, how long can we survive without water? We can't survive that long without water. It's not good for us. Basically, our body is electricity, right? It's these signals, neurological signals, and they move through atoms. They move through the cells, which are mostly water. And so we need to be hydrated or the function starts to diminish. So that's one thing that we need to stay hydrated. We can survive. I've done it. There's dry fasting. So you don't eat anything, drink anything. I've done 3 days. And then you got to rehydrate. You'll prehydrate and rehydrate. So you can do it, but it's not that good for you. I drink a gallon a day just to stay hydrated. So you want to drink a lot of water and keep replenishing. Yeah. Okay, I got time for this one last question about transcending. That word might sound a little woo-woo or ethereal. What I mean is just staying outside of my identity. So my identity, my parents called Paul. So that identity, Paul, I want to separate from that identity, to not be it. This is where it gets weird, and we'll dive into it in this workshop. But this separation from Paul. So I'm operating without any past or future, which means I'm present, which means I'm free to make the choice. I can be Paul at any time. It's my default. I'm going to fall back to being Paul. So I have to consciously not be Paul. And if I want to break through this glass ceiling that's holding me back, I have to actually actively act against it. What would Paul not do? Where does Paul get scared? This is a great example, this social media stuff I'm doing. I would prefer to sit at home and be quiet and not be found, right? But that will only get me limited results. So I'm acting against that. I'm coming out and speaking to you guys, and hopefully some of this will help you guys and make a difference in your life and make a difference in our species and make a difference in our planet. So I'm acting against Paul's level of comfort. That's what transcending is. Okay? I've run out of time. Thank you guys so much for joining me, for being along. We're going to change the format. So I'm still going to come to you. Maybe it's going to be weekly or something. Join the workshop, April 25th. Go to my profile. You'll be able to see it. my website, paulamvincent.com. All the information's there. Join me. Let's do this. Let's work together. Let's change it. Now's the time. All right, guys. Take care.